Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. All right, man, I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. So you guys know, man, we got the Sinquefield Cup going on right now, and we got Wesley. So he's in the hunt to be one of the candidates for next year. And I mean, of course, to try to win a tournament. So I got the tournament leaders, Wesley So versus Levon Aronian, coming from round 6. As always, all my people coming from the Philippines, I will say Maraming Salamat. Anybody who is coming from Armenia, I will say Merci. But if you guys are ready to go, homie, let's see what we got for this game, son. All right, man, so we got E4, best by test. We got E5, regular classical chess. We got knight to F3. We got knight to C6. We got bishop to B5, knight to F6. And we do have the start of the Berlin defense. But I can promise you, do not click off. This is a decisive game. This is definitely one of the few decisive games of the tournament, so stick around. We got castles by white. This does allow you to give up the pawn, which you guys know with black's king being in the center of the board. I mean, you're going to go ahead and get that back, so no worries. We got rook to E1, knight goes to D6. We see knight taking E5, and it might look like isn't this bishop just hanging now? Absolutely not, because of knight to C6 with check, and you will be parting with your queen. Hopefully you don't like her very much. But anyways, we don't see that. We see bishop to E7 just covering that file. We got bishop dropping back to F1. Knight takes E5. Rook takes E5. Castles by black. D4. So this is all very, very standard mainline stuff for the Berlin. Not a whole lot of traps other than the queen trap possibly coming up. We do see bishop to F6. You know, rook's a little too nice on E5. Plus, you know, you want to try to activate the bishop just a little bit more. We got rook going back to E1. We see rook over to E8. Bishop goes to F4. Like I said, I mean, you are presented with a capture on E8, but why go into a capture when you can just simply develop? When you do go into trades, when you make captures, you do want to make sure that it benefits your position to some degree, and you're not just trading, you know, capturing just to capture. We got bishop to F4, rook takes E1, queen takes E1. And the little small detail about this one is it does make the knight or make the queen step over a square, and so this pawn is actually undefended. So we do see knight going to E8 in this position, but black, if you do take here, you gotta make sure that you play this a certain way, because you can't get too hungry, because bishop would take D6, and if you think, hey man, I'm gonna grab me a rook, you would be absolutely wrong. After bishop took B2, you would be looking at bishop taking C7, and the issue that you have is the fact that your king is back rank. So you would have to be moving the queen over here. You can't capture here because this is just mating 1. So don't do that. So there's a little bit of traps going on in that one. The knight does come back to E8. We do see knight to C3. This just give the bishop up. But there is definitely enough play and compensation for white. We do see knight to D5. And you kind of have a similar idea going on. You know, this is a very soft point. So knight taking, bishop taking. It pretty much brings us to the same idea with just one set of pieces off. We got the move C6. Knight goes to E7 with check. We see king sliding over to F8. Knight taking C8. And you have to be a little bit careful in this position, because there is definitely quite a bit of traps. This bishop is undefended, so you have some possible queen B4 checks coming. Let's say the rook takes. You got this right here, and then you would be, you know, kind of messing, you know, up one of your pawns over here. And so we do see black just simply counterattacking this bishop right here, which is also undefended. And Wesley So just says, bro, I don't care about none of that, son. How about rook to D1? And the absolute best move is going to be rook taking C8, because if we back up, if you get too hungry as black and you say, hey, man, I'm just going to go. I mean, this knight ain't really going nowhere, right? I'm just going to take this bishop. You would be looking at a very, very sad occurrence. You see the bar. You would be looking at queen to E7 with check. The king would step over, and then queen to E8 is checkmate. So you see, even though it's very, very even, man, there's a lot of checkmates in the position, bro. So don't just, you know, don't go reaching. So like I said, we do see queen to F6. We got rook over to D1, and then the rook does take on C8. We got queen up to E4, and we're double attacking this bishop. So, I mean, you definitely have some options. You can retreat it, you know, kind of however you want to do. But we have actually reached the point in the game. Levon Aronian plays a really interesting move here. If you want to go ahead and pause the video and try to guess and see what he does, go ahead and do so. Okay, cool. So it's funny because Wesley So has actually played this from the black side already at one point, and he actually just went back bishop to c5. You have, like I said, you have a lot of different options in this position, and you also have, owing to the fact that I'm always saying f7 and f2 are vulnerable because the king is only protecting them, Levon Aronian did go bishop takes f2 with check. Now, if you said bishop to c5, or you said bishop to b6, or any of the other bishop retreat moves, you know, you definitely wouldn't be wrong. So that would have been like some alternate moves. But like I said, we did see bishop taking f2 with check. We got king taking f2, and then we do have the really nice g5, and you are going to be getting your material back that you just gave away. And you are a pawn up after black goes rook takes d7. So you see that white is constantly trying to, you know, establish restore material equality. That's the word I'm looking for. We do see rook to c7, and this move might look kind of crazy at first glance because you're like, man, the bishop and the rook is over there. Like, it's kind of crazy, right? Well, I mean, as you guys remember, this bishop is pinned to the king. So, I mean, it's a very valid square to go to. We do see rook taking c7, knight taking c7. And then we got the novelty of the game, which it's a really, really explosive, crazy looking move. So, I mean, it kind of seems like somebody would have found it by now. And it is the move queen to e5. There's very simple logic behind that. Number one, I mean, you're threatening the pawn that pins your bishop currently. You are threatening the undefended queen, and you're also threatening this undefended knight. So, like, I mean, if you're looking for a move that gives you a whole lot of bang for your buck, this is literally the move. So it does force queen takes f4 with check. Queen takes f4, pawn takes f4. And because of the double nature of these pawns, you know, we're basically like, hey, man, we can go ahead and at our leisure, you know, capture that pawn. And we do have our bishop on f1. So we do see king to f3 just getting, you know, closer to the pawn. And we're starting to come up into like a crucial position where it's really easy to kind of go wrong. We do see Aronian go knight to d5. And this does allow the immediate c4, just knocking this knight away. I mean, it wasn't really immediately defendable. Even if you did go, let's say, knight to e6, you would be looking at bishop to d3, attacking this pawn, and then you would be looking at bishop to f5, trying to get rid of that knight. And, you know, there's always going to be a way where you can, you know, pretty much get rid of this pawn right here. But we do see this position here. Knight goes back to c7. So like I said, I mean, you're not losing in a lot of variations, but you definitely have a specific way you need to play if you're black. We got bishop to d3, attacking that h7 square. Like I said before, we got h6 just defending. And now the king does take f4. So we have gotten everything back to even. And then we have the move c5. The two things that I want you to notice about this position right here is the fact that with this pawn back on c6, we got b7, c6 is kind of like a little wall right here, right? The bishop doesn't have quite as much scope with those pawns there. That's the first thing that you want to notice. And then also what you want to notice is where the black king is. And this is going to become relevant because I'm going to be talking about it in a second. So we see the king going to e5. We see king to e7. We see bishop to f5. And then we see the move b6. Okay. So like I was telling you guys before, the king's position and the scope of the bishop, right? One of the things that Levon Aronian is very subtle, but one of the things Levon Aronian has done with his position is he's basically like maximized Wesley So's bishop like kind of for him. So you see that you have a lot of space over here, and then now you have a fresh new diagonal that you can use for the white bishop. So it's like I said, it's subtle, but when you get into endgames that are mostly open and you have a bishop versus a knight, these things can be exponentially crazy. So what I want to do is go back to an alternative that Levon could have done. After we see king taking f4, a great alternative was to actually play king to e7. And then you see king to e5. You got the move a5, bishop to f5. So you have a lot of similarities. But after f6 check, the king has to back up somewhere. You do see knight to a6. And there are some major differences in this position. Number one, this king is one step back. It doesn't have any entry points anywhere. If it goes over here, the knight would be coming here. You can come over here after the check, but king can just sit down on d6. And you see that black has made a major improvement, and they are just a lot more dominant in this position. And knight to c5 is a beautiful square because this bishop probably would most likely try to go to the base of this chain and start trying to, harass. But knight to c5 just protects and shuts all that down. So it's a much better look, but we did not see that. We see the move b6. We got h4. And one of the other things that you need to notice about this position, if you're black, is zugzwang, or being in a position, you know, basically what zugzwang means is you're in a position where you would like to not move. You'd like to pass the move, but you can't pass the move. You have to move because that's the rules of chess. So white is going to be able to, because with all these pawns, you have 4 pawns. So you basically, of course, this wastes the move. So now you only have 7 moves you can make. But you see that white has a lot of moves that they're going to be able to make, kind of like a waiting move. And they're going to be able to put black in a position where they really don't want to move. So we'll be seeing a little bit more of that coming up. Knight goes to e8. The king goes over to d5 because basically the plan now is to just creep up here and see if we can start snatching off some pawns, bro. That is one of the other things that you need to be thinking about when you're getting into an endgame when you have a knight versus a bishop. This knight is not capable of covering the entire board like this bishop is. This bishop is a very long-range piece, so that is why usually, especially in an open position, bishops fare a little bit better than knights. And in closed positions, I mean, knights are usually superior to bishops, so you guys see how open it is. The knight comes to d6, attacking the bishop. Why not? If you can get a bishop for free, then you just have a knight versus nothing. The bishop goes back to h3. We got knight back to e8. We see a repetition of moves. Now, Wesley So it still has like close to 30 minutes at this point, so he's not trying to gain time. But, you know, it's like, I mean, just repeat moves if you want to. I mean, it doesn't hurt nothing. Just make sure you don't go into threefold. We got knight going back to d6, and then we do change the move this time, going back to c2. We see the move f6. Bishop goes to g6. Knight goes to b7. We see b3. So you see that white is constantly making like subtle pawn movements, and they're basically just kind of asking black, like, what do you want to do? You know, you really don't want to move this king anywhere. It's going to start kind of giving some ground. You also still have more tempi that you can use because king to c6 is a move that is going to be coming very, very quickly. Knight goes back to d8. We see bishop down to f5, just protecting the e6 square. We got knight over to f7, and then this is where white starts to make inroads into black's position. So basically, black is having to try to switch to say, okay, when you go over here to try to capture this pawn, I'm going to try to go over here and oppose your king, and maybe I can make you be stuck on the edge of the board. But like I said, white has just too many extra tempi to waste to basically always be able to continuously throw the move back to black. So we do see knight to d6. You got to make sure you protect your bishop, homie. The bishop goes up to h7. We see knight to f7. We see king up to c7. We got knight down to e5. Bishop goes to f5. We see knight back to f7. We got the move a3. Just wasting a little bit more time. Just playing slowly. We're not in no hurry, bro. We got knight over to d6. And then we do see bishop to d3. And this is a very instructive pawn retreat. Because if you notice, this bishop is controlling all of these squares. And it's making it very hard. Let me just draw that again. It's making it very hard for this knight to really infiltrate into white's position. So that is definitely something you want to be paying attention to. We got knight going back to f7. We got king to b7. So you see white's king is getting closer and closer. No hurries, bro. Like, we're good, man. Make sure you're not dropping any type of forks. And, you know, king goes to d6. We see king taking a7. And then you see that idea from black. Like, I'm trying to pin you on the edge of the board. But like I said, white has just too many reserve moves with their pawns. We got king down to a6. Knight goes to d8. We see bishop to e4, trying to dominate this knight once again if it wants to try to hop into any of these squares. We got knight down to e6. We got the move b4. Because, I mean, we have this majority on the queen side, so we're going to get some stuff rolling. Pawn takes, knight goes to d4. We see c5, pawn takes. And you see that we have just cleared out all of the opposition for our pawn. We got knight down to e2. King goes down to a5. We're being patient. We're not rushing nothing, man. We got this nice outside pass pawn. We got a bishop versus a knight. Everything is everything. We got knight up to f4. We see king to b4. We see knight to e2. We got king over to c4. Knight goes to f4. And then we do see the move g3. And Wesley So actually said himself that he didn't really like this move after he played it. He was like, maybe I should have did something different. The something different looks a little something like this. In the position with knight to f4, what you are trying to achieve is after you make the move g4, the king would probably go to d8. You see bishop to f5, king to c7, and then the move h5. And you're gonna as white construct this structure here And you're basically going to be telling black, if they want to trade for your bishop on f5, you're going to be able to lock the position down and you're going to be able to win the end game like so. Let's just make these couple moves. For example, you're getting into a position. Obviously, this is horrible, but you're getting into this position. I'm just trying to illustrate a point. Knight taking, pawn taking, right? So now everything is locked on the king side. The major problem in the situation is you have what is considered by Jeremy Silman, I don't know if any of you guys have read his books, as the fox in the chicken coop. So basically what you are doing in essence is you're using your outside pass pawn as a decoy to control the king's movement, and then you're just going to go and start mopping up some pawns. So if we see it in action, you would see something possibly similar to this. The king only has so many squares that can go to try to make sure this pawn doesn't queen, and then you just literally desert the pawn. And you see that white is going to start going, and they're going to start mopping up some pawns, creating some more pass pawns. And I mean, there really isn't anything that black can do. So that is something that Wesley was talking about. He probably should have just went into, because obviously it's going to be something that he's going to be familiar with. But we do see G3. We got knight down to E2. We got G4. We got knight to F4. And you see that, you know, white is still kind of in a situation where he can like possibly construct something like this in this position. So H5 is always there. We got bishop down to F3. We got knight to G6. We got king to D5. And something that you want to be careful about is it might seem like this pawn is just for the taking, right? Haha, we got a pawn. Oh no. Your knight is trapped, homie. And it's that same idea that I was telling you guys about before, just in a different way. Anyways, we go back to king to D5. Knight goes to F4 check. We repeat a little bit, going back to what we had. After knight to F4 this time, we do see the king changing with king to D4. The knight goes back. We got bishop to E4. And we're just daring, you know, black to take our pawn. We're good with that. So we do see knight to E7, king to C4. The king shifts over. We got king to B5, king to C7. We got king down to B4, king to D7. King goes over to A5. And Wesley so is kind of starting to get a little bit low on time. So he's kind of making like some, you know, kind of random moves where it's not hurting his position. There really isn't much you can do to hurt your position. But he's just trying to make sure he, you know, doesn't run low on time. So the king goes to C7. We see king back to B5. We got knight up to C8. And then we do see after the move H5. So we have gotten that king side structure that we wanted. We do see this situation here. And then we do repeat this once. And, you know, Wesley just gets some more time on his clock. We do see knight back to E7. We got bishop down to G2. And the one really try for black is to go F5, which you see them do. But instead of capturing, you see the push of G5. And even though this is the wrong rook pawn, we still have a situation where black is not going to be able to hold it. We got pawn taking G5, H6. Knight goes to G6. We got H7. And now literally the black knight is completely stuck. And then we do see the move G4. We got king to D5. Being very careful, though. You don't really have to be careful in this situation because, I mean, any knight movement down is going to result in the queening of this pawn. So it just makes it a little bit more messy. I'll say that. We got the move G3. And this bishop is actually in a good position to make sure that these pawns don't advance further than this. And this is one of the main, you know, the main ideas. And like I said, this knight cannot move anywhere because you're just going to be queening your pawn. So we see bishop down to H1. And it is in this position that Levon Aronian resigns the game. And you guys can kind of see why. Like I said, this knight is completely stuck on the square. Any movement by it results in the queening of this pawn. And you can't force these pawns down, especially after this move here. I mean, you're just going to go after, you know, you're going to go after the knight. Actually, that actually draws. So you're going to go after the knight this way instead of blundering. But that is that game. I appreciate everybody very much for stopping by. Maraming salamat aking magkaibigan. Posa na nunod ng aking mga video. Hello ulit. Messiah Kong Kitty Kang Muli. It's really nice to see you guys again. I appreciate it very much. Anybody who is coming from Armenia, I will say Vog Juven and Inspeces. And merci for stopping by and taking a look. And I will see you guys next time.